How many times has a game made you feel joy, sadness, rage? How many times has a game made you feel alive? These moments are the reason why I play video games. Throughout 2024, I've devoted 360 hours to play video games, and within that time, I beat 60 titles, all for the sake of finding the kind of moments that made me fall in love with this medium. Unsurprisingly, I did not enjoy all of these games, but I still found some great titles along the way. That's why I'm here today, to share what I believe is truly worth your time. I played 360 hours, so you don't have to. These are the 10 best games I've played in 2024. Before we start, there are a few caveats to the list. First of all, I've played games released from 1987 all the way up to this year, so the list isn't the best of what has come out in 2024, but rather what I've played during that year, regardless of when it came out. Secondly, these games are ranked subjectively. There may be quote-unquote perfect games that have no flaws that I didn't like as much as quote-unquote flawed games, which offer more interesting proposals. This list isn't objective. They are my recommendations. With that in mind, let's start with what didn't make it into the top 10. Now, without any further ado, have you ever wondered how WarioWare would be with skeletons in it? If you're familiar with the indie horror scene, you surely are familiar with Adam Pipe, and if that name doesn't ring any bells, then this probably will. So, besides No Players Online, Adam Pipe has also made many other small horror games like What If Google Maps Was Scary? What If Cars Were Existential? What If 3D Was Scary? Which I can relate to honestly. And a little game jam project that was later become Spookware. In this game, we accompany the Skelebros, a trio of charismatic skeletons as they go on various adventures, ranging from going to school, going on a cruise, running a restaurant, going to prison because they didn't pay the taxes of said restaurant, and so on. Along with the changes in scenery, we will play different kinds of microgames to advance forward in whichever task at hand. They are short games which will require you to react quickly and solve a small task. As I mentioned before, this gameplay loop is inspired by WarioWare. As indicated by its visual style, Spookware is on the tamer side of Adam's games, not so much a horror game, but rather it only takes horror as a theme. You may see monsters, dismembered parts, and blood, but they are all props in a silly world inhabited by skeletons. The story is quite lighthearted, it does not take itself too seriously, and makes cheesy puns every opportunity it gets without ever reaching the point of annoying me at level release. Plus, Spookware is filled to the brim with love for horror films and games, with references left and right. I'm too much of a wuss to be knowledgeable about horror films, but even I found them silly and charming. So if you're into that, you probably will have an even better experience than me. Spookware at its heart is a fun adventure which is well worth your time. With simple controls and new gimmicks thrown on each chapter, it becomes rather enticing rather quickly. Although if you've never played a WarioWare like me, and are unsure if the microgame format is for you, Adam has released the Game Jam version, plus some bonuses, for free on his itch.io page, linked in the description. Once, I dreamt I was a butterfly. I forgot myself and knew only my happiness as a butterfly. Soon, I awoke, and I was myself again. Did I dream I was a butterfly? Or do I now dream that I'm a man? Shuangxi. When I played Persona 5 Royal during the 2020 lockdown, I fell in love immediately with its characters, battle system, and albeit flawed yet endearing story. But Persona 1 is nothing like it. It took me some time to appreciate Persona 1. It was a really rough transition going from the newest entry to the first, as current store elements of the series like the one more attacks, the calendar system, and social links aren't present here. But even though there was some initial disappointment, Persona 1 still managed to charm me through its story and ambience. Persona 1 is an RPG about high school students reconnecting with their classmate Maki, who was chronically sick until recently. Not only does she seem healthy now, but other occurrences like earthquakes, shifting buildings, demons, and other strange entities have been appearing these past few days. So with the aid of ghost-like entities called personas, you will all get to the bottom of what has been happening in the Sebek company building, which seems to be the source of it all. Story starts a bit slow, and I wasn't really sure if I felt motivated enough to go through it just to fight evil corporate guy. But that is just how the game opens. Eventually, the seeds of misery that the game spread throughout its beginning hours start to flourish all at the same time. When I realized what the story really was about, I was moved all the way through it, pushing until the end for the sake of my friends. Now, what is the only issue that I have with Persona 1? Gameplay. It's just the goddamn gameplay. This game is 26 years old, and its remake not only does not change much, but it is 10 years old as well. So all of the quality of life improvements that have been made to RPGs in this century are essentially non-existent, except for the auto battle button. We do have auto battle, and I always my life. But you know, there are small inconveniences like random encounters, need for grinding every now and then, being limited to saving specific areas. Regardless of the game's showing age, it still felt worthwhile to me. It has such a personality and interesting concept that I can't help but override its bad habits with the way its ending touched me. If you're new into the series, you should definitely try entering through either Persona 3 Reload, 4 Golden, or 5 Royal. If we're lucky, by the time you're finished, we will get another Persona 1 remake, hopefully with a Reload type coat of paint. But if you've already played the modern titles and are willing to go through a completely different experience, then give the remake SMT Persona a shot. I'll leave the much needed guide I used in the description. And if you ever wondered why the whole franchise is called Persona, this game has the perfect answer in its story more than any other title. You are out of the country for a job. You do miss her, but this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Your plane crashed in the Antarctic. Your pilot is injured. You miss her. The air is cold. There is a red light far away. You decide to go for help. And you miss her. South of the Circle is a walking simulator with some decision making here and there. The game makes you jump back and forth from the past as the protagonist remembers how he met his girlfriend Clara, and the present as he looks for help in the mysteriously abandoned research facilities in the Antarctic. If we are used to games being like action films, this is more like a period drama, no exaggeration. Regardless, if you're into film-like games, trust me when I say that South of the Circle is perfect. It made the decision to be a romance/drama, to be set in the Cold War, to have an American protagonist, and to make small dialogue options. All of those are intentional, serve its grander theme, and they all pay off. It stays true to its particular vision of a story. It sets out to tell a narrative in a very specific way, which may even leave you feeling hollow, but I will argue that it is executed in a perfect manner. This may not be your cup of tea, but it was perfectly brewed. When immortality is the only cure, how close can we get to a placebo? Years ago, I found a little game on itch.io called Rooms. It was a simple puzzle game, but its story was quite novel, so I wishlisted the developer's newest game to help him out. This year, I found it on sale, having completely forgotten where it had came from. Just like Rooms, Evans Remains is a simple game with an interesting story. You play as Isis, a girl who is looking for some boy named Evan on a tropical island. You don't know why you're looking for him or even what he looks like, which, as you can imagine, is the whole point of the game. Throughout the island, you will solve some small platforming puzzles with some dialogues in between them. Honestly, this felt a little bit repetitive at first, but when more characters started to come in, I was already invested. Even by the time in which I thought I got the story, the game pulled the rug from under me and kicked me as I lay limp on the ground. I couldn't even react to it properly. All I could think was how the game's story was so tightly knit together, even being fascinated with every punch in the gut that the game kept giving me. What a wonderful experience that was. If you're in for some crying, check out Evans Remains. Plus, get the supporting an Argentinian developer, and that's always nice. You know, the hardest part of growing up isn't to realize that most adults are monsters, but to try not to become a monster yourself. I don't really play multiplayer games. Because of the replayable and atemporal nature, almost all of them lack what I like in a video game, which is the way they can convey a story. But I do play some Fortnite with friends and co-op games with my girlfriend. Her and I decided to try Bakura out of its novelty. You play as two childhood friends exploring a forest, with its main drawing point being that one player sees the world as a forest with animals and the other perceives it as a robot dystopian world. The game requires you to play in two different devices, without split screen, as the intent is to use both of your perspectives to solve different puzzles. One may have an ability that the other may not have. One may see a platform where the other doesn't, etc. This is a very interesting gimmick for creating asymmetric gameplay, but it isn't just for gameplay. The perspectives have narrative intent. They are the way the characters perceive the world around them. There are even moments in which the game tells you to shut up and have each one experience a different traumatic event in solitaire. Then it places you back together, both wondering, what the hell did you just see? Because I don't think it was worse than mine. By the time my girlfriend and I finished the game, we noticed we were missing some achievements. So we played through the game another time and a half. It was compelling enough to see the opposite perspective on the second playthrough, and the third time we unlocked the true ending, which just made it all worthwhile. Altogether, it is a game about growing up, growing apart, and being secluded in society, really asking you to reflect upon what happens to people in isolation and what they can become. Bakura cannot be played alone, so I urge you to find anyone that could play Bakura with you. It's quite accessible with its crossplay between PC, Mac, Switch and mobile. Although I'll warn you, despite its cutesy look, it has all of these content warnings. Make sure that both you and the person you're playing with are comfortable with its topics. If you are, then trust me, Bakura is well worth your time. Wasn't alone, exiled. Wasn't exiled, dead. Wasn't dead, forgotten. Marie Laurencin. I know. 2 Persona games in the top 10. This isn't surprising to any of my friends, but trust me, this isn't plain favoritism. They are both good games, especially the second one. Innocent Sin improves vastly from the first entry. There are way less stretches of the game without the plot advancing. We get way more fleshed out protagonists, an easier to follow third-person camera, and we can save anywhere we want. Persona 2 feels like a proper sequel in its advancements, yes, but it also does plot-wise. In Persona 2, we play as a group of students and reporters who are trying to solve the mystery revolving around Joker, who is an entity that can grant you any wish if you invoke him by calling your own cell phone number. However, it isn't that simple, as the protagonists soon realize that some of them aren't granted any wishes, but rather have their desires stolen. There have been rumors becoming reality, terrorist attacks, secret societies, ancient civilizations. It is very ambitious with its story, to say the least. Modern Persona games are technically happening in the same universe, but they are more anthological, with only a few nods to each other here and there. However, you can see the direct consequences of Persona 1's story on its sequel, as you get to see all of your classmates now grown up, with one of them even helping you along the way. And I know that it isn't that big of an interaction, but to see Maki again, now working on healthcare, just made me tear up. So we have the emotions of the first game leveraging the experience, but its own protagonists also provide greatly. The story revolves around the friendship between its characters, which feels way more nuanced than most of the protagonists in the newer games, if I'm honest. This entry also introduces the Persona tradition to have optional romantic interests, but without the social system, so it is more embedded into the plot instead. Plus, there is a male romance option, making the protagonist canonically queer, and it is done very respectfully, so that is cool as hell. I still haven't played the sequel Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, as Innocent Sin's ending doesn't really conclude the story, but rather it sets its stage for the sequel. Regardless, I can still say that my experience with Innocent Sin was quite memorable. If you are interested in this one, as I said, try 3 Reload, 4 Golden, or 5 Royal in the meantime. And if you are already familiar with this series, still play Persona 1 first. As I said, knowing the characters greatly adds to the experience. I completed the game, I closed it, I uninstalled it, but even after I turned off the computer, this game's world continued to exist within my memories. In one shot we help Nico, a kid who has woken up in an unfamiliar house, and who is said to be the prophet who will restore the sun in this strange world. Except that Nico doesn't really belong to this video game world. They were just a normal kid until now. They don't know what they are doing here, but they do know that you, the player, exists, and wants your help to finish whatever this game is supposed to be so they can go back home. So yes, this is one of those self-aware video games, but what truly separates it from the rest is that it doesn't break the fourth wall for the funnies, but instead plants a whole meta-narrative around it. This game's story isn't anything that grand, but its premise and the way in which the story is told, how it makes you as a player interact with these characters, is what makes you really reflect upon many things. Without entering too much into spoiler territory, I believe what best encapsulates One Shot's essence are its robots. As universe, they can be tamed, which is to say that they can develop a conscience beyond their programming if you interact with them enough. One of these robots even mentions that they aren't truly alive. It is just a suspension of disbelief in your end. So maybe they aren't alive, but don't they feel? Does it matter if they feel? This goes beyond the robots. It goes beyond the game world. You can't prove that anyone in the outside world is even real. How can you prove that me, the person making this video, is alive? And does it matter? That is One Shot. There's a gun in your hand. In front of you, a body made of red glass, shattering. Except that the shots aren't hitting the ground. They stay frozen in the shape of the destruction that your trigger caused. As you reach out to the figure, the body gains weight and red glass starts to rain. That's when you realize that time only moves when you move. Superhot is one of the most innovative shooters I've played in years. Its gameplay loop will have you soloing dozens of enemies in various locations, sometimes with guns, katanas or even bottles. But your most valuable weapon really is yourself. You will learn how to use Superhot system to your advantage. Punch an enemy to snatch its gun, shoot with anticipation and watch them walk into the bullets. Out of ammo? Then throw it at them. Superhot is a constant stream of these cool Matrix John Wick Quicksilver moments. Even if you fail, you will feel compelled to keep going. You will get a flow unlike anything else. You won't learn how to use Superhot system to your advantage, it will become part of you. The bullet time mechanic is a huge power trip, of course, but it isn't just that. It blew my mind when Superhot is one of the most innovative shooters I've played in years. It's kind of random, no plot, no reason for anything. Just killing red guys. Superhot is one of the most innovative shooters I've played in years. Play Superhot. Now, I want you to bear with me for the second place. I know that some people don't like this game, but just listen why I think it's worth your time. androids become human is set in a distant future in which androids are sold as commodities. But recently, there have been reports of some of them gaining sentience. This game gains its uniqueness as it lets you control 3 different protagonists, all androids, and it's up to you to allow them to rebel and acquire individuality to become human. We have Kara, a housekeeper android who wants to protect a little girl from an abusive household. Marcus, an assistant android who aids an elderly artist who seems him like a son. And Kana, an android detective who is working with a human policeman to solve cases involving those androids which gain sentience, deviants. Just south of the circle from number 8, Detroit is one of those cinematic video games in which gameplay is limited to just walking, making some decisions here and there, and quick time events in moments of action. Now, if you don't like film-like games because the gameplay seems boring, that's fine, I respect your taste. And if you do like narrative-heavy games and you still don't like Detroit, I completely understand you as well. You see, I love Detroit because I have never played a video game in which almost every decision does matter to the story and branches in different directions every chapter. And as ungraceful as quick time event fights are compared to the likes of action RPGs, shooters or even Metroidvanias, I felt on edge like no other game has made me feel because of the stakes involved. All of the 3 protagonists matter, affect one another, and even if one of them dies, the story goes on, just as life does. But while Detroit's greatest strength is how the story is conveyed, its Achilles heel is the story itself. As interesting as a mere concept of consciousness, being alive, and respecting other sentient beings can be, the truth is that Detroit doesn't explore any of them in much depth. It just leaves those words on the table and expects you to go, oh, well, that's cool. All said, I do believe that Detroit is both worth playing and very important to the artistic medium of video games, as it proposes a branching narrative that no other game has set out to do in this scale. Detroit's story still hits. As I've said, I feel true tension, sadness, conviction. It is effective in putting up a show, and I highly recommend it as such. Just don't expect it to be as deep as other entries on this list. If you're up for it, here are the content warnings.
You know, he joined because of me. What were the words I used? Right. It's a great opportunity. Easy money. Just a trip or 2. Someone else's words in my mouth. I tried. I really did. We are defined by our past, but not slaves to it.
I had played How Fish is Made around August and thought it was fine, but I didn't really feel drawn to the studio's mouth-washing weird spin-off thing. But as the months went by, I started hearing nothing but praise towards the game. A dear friend of mine even gave it to me as a gift. So when December came around and I needed just a few more hours to total 360, I gave mouth-washing a shot. I played it in one sitting and thanked my friend for the gift as soon as I rolled credits. Besides some cumbersome item management, all of its elements are used wisely, deliberately, perfectly. I wholeheartedly believe mouthwashing is a perfect game. If you have absolutely no heavy topics that you dislike or are sensible towards, go play it, right now. The list is over. You can go and come back afterwards. I'd hate to spoil you any more than I already have by the mere mention that it has heavy subject matter. If you do draw the line at certain heavy matters, as much as I want to avoid spoilers, your comfort comes first. So, here are all of the content warnings. If you're comfortable with that, you can go play it as well. Now, for those who have already played the game, or probably those who I have yet convinced to do so. In Mouthwashing, we play as a spaceship crew, which is on a year-long trip to deliver goods for some courier company, jumping in time between before and after the spaceship crashes with an asteroid. Within the different perspectives, we perceive different notions of good, evil, danger, and responsibility. We lose our sanity along with the crew, and you can really pick up how different eyes perceive fear in different shapes, with how Fish is made being somewhat tongue-in-cheek. I never expected this amount of nuance in every detail in Mouthwashing. It's all contributing to its theme and story. Mouthwashing is a reflection of how patriarchal capitalism destroys lives. It denounces it loudly, clearly, and proudly. Its story doesn't make you forgive the antagonist, as that is not the point, but it makes you understand how he got to that mental state. It wants to show you how wretched the hooves of corporate capitalism can be. It makes an effort to show you how this horse represents as much evil as the monsters that it creates. I consider this to be a perfect game because it uses every element created in its favor to its larger theme. The sky screens, the posters, the monologues, which doors can be locked, the gun, the data mush, the banality that the crew only transports Mouthwash. It all builds onto each other. I am mesmerized by it all. Mouthwashing is detailed, immersive, bold, profound. Mouthwashing is my favorite game of 2024. And that's it for 2024. Firstly, thank you for lending me your ears for some minutes. I know that I have a really specific taste in games, so for anyone to listen, for you to be here right now, makes this worth it. Even if only one person exits this video and enjoys just one of these games, then the purpose of the video has been achieved. I really had wanted to start here on YouTube for a long time, but I always felt like there was nothing really worth saying. But to talk about what I'm passionate and hopefully give others the opportunity to experience that passion seems worth doing. So if everything goes well, this will be the first of many videos on this channel. I won't tell you to subscribe, as who knows what this will end up becoming. But for now, I want to create, so we'll see how this goes.